Hello everyone, I'm your host MX2, and in this video we'll be talking about this Xavier image. So this came up as one of my wallpapers recently, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna just try to model it. Why not? It's a fun little piece of art, let's do it. Well, it turns out that it was done by someone named Amelia Vidal, who's the lead character designer of X-Men 97, which I love that show. So with that said, I went ahead and put the concept art into Blender and attempted to give it a shot, and this was my result. So if we go into camera view, we can just do like a 360 where we just let it rotate, and we see that the topo is just kind of whatever. But if we Alt V and we go into solid texture mode, we can see that also I started off texture painting it. However, I'm not done yet, but this is where I left off as of the recording. But it did look at least good enough for me to leave off with this first section because I did put quite a bit of time into it. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time just kind of going over it, just with a little bit of an intro, just showing a little bit of what the result's going to be, so that way you can tune in or tune out, or decide if you want to watch it or not, or whatever the case may be. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in and go over the time lapse of me putting this together. I was about to jump to the time lapse itself, but I realized I should take a moment and actually talk for a moment. So this is the version I left off with as of the ending of this particular video. However, let me show the iteration. So if we press Alt V, we can go back to solid, and we see that I just kind of hard modeled everything that I saw indicated in the concept, which probably wasn't needed, but I was just being weird trying to go for a particular style that I'll probably never get, but practice makes perfect, right? So continuing on, if we go to iteration 0, this is where we basically started off with this. We probably want to turn on backface culling. Let's see, I'm trying to remember where it's at. There we go. Actually, we just want to get in and actually fix these normal issues. We don't want to let these normals be flipped, so we'll let backface culling be on. And so for this one, we were using the UV project modifier, which means that if we jump into texture form, we basically projected the concept art directly at this, and then on the back we had a secondary material that blocked it. So if I were to take that material away, we see that that's what happened. So I just didn't want to see his face on the back as well. It was just haunting, so we just put a material on that. Well, I put a material on that, say we, like I'm crazy. But that was basically the first iteration of me kind of going through this, right? So if we go to version 1, we see that I started to get a little more detail with it, at least as far as the eyeballs were concerned. And then if we go to number 2, we see that I'm beginning to model in the details. We go back and forth. I was just trying to actually keep iterations in the same file instead of doing iterative saving, which is what I usually do. I always fall back to iterative saving, and I find myself with like 100 versions of the same file, which is great and all, but Blender's kind of stable right now. I might be goofing off playing around with trying to keep iterations in the same file, but continuing on, we jump up to version 3. We see that not a lot's happening between these two versions. In fact, we pull back a little bit. Let's see what we have going on. And all it is just a little bit of solidification. In fact, it took me a moment, but I didn't notice that there's a little bit of an overlap with the mesh, where I probably should have just grabbed this mesh and just move it. Like, all I have to do is just slide that out of the way. So that's that mistake that you see. In fact, I slide it out of the way there, and I'm basically good to go. But it's something that I just kind of overlooked for a moment because I was just stuck in tunnel vision with this model or something, I guess. But we'll go ahead and correct this retroactively, even though I need to record myself actually doing it on a recording, not this recording. But continuing on, we now get back to the last one, and we see that all I did was just pull out the tie a little bit more. And then if we press Alt V, we can look at the texture job that I did, where I just started off doing the texture. However, I see that I probably just need to blast this and try to get some sort of rim shader going to try to get the outlines, which I'll be trying probably off camera and then come back on in the next video. In fact, I'll need to probably paint that a little bit better as well. But in whatever case, now I'm able to at least go and do a 360 turn, even though I'm not completely proud of it. But, when I was looking at it, I was admiring it because it was like, hey, it's like one of those models from that game 13. I mean, not the remake where they messed it up, but the original version. But, yeah, I tried so hard to keep all of the frown lines and things going on with this. But, anyways, I will stop wasting time, and now let's jump into the actual video itself. Alright, so I re-recorded this dialogue at a time when I have more energy. Anytime I yawn during a dialogue session, I usually just start completely over. I think I was like half an hour in, and I just started over. So, starting off using hopsCutter to make a face, just my favorite thing. I just love Blue Box. Blue Box is just my favorite. And just getting in and just using a little bit of nSolve and just trying to get in here and create a man. First I like to look at the reference image just kind of offset on a different monitor, and I just look up at it, look down at Blender, and I model, and I'm just looking at it, and that's usually how I start out. But the blocking process is something that every time I do it, I learn something new with it. But of course, I'm no George Zaki. That guy's a master when it comes to blocking things in. But I feel that modeling people is an essential skill. I always talk about how I once read a Blender book, and in that book they were like, hey, don't model humans, just use make human. And I just thought that was really funny. I was like, dang. They're like, what do they have to say about cars? Never model a car, never model a gargantuan spaceship, But anyways, we're just having fun here. So, getting in here and just playing with proportions, using a little knife, little join. And I am very much in love with Join right now. Like, Join has grown into becoming kind of a little super op, but I just haven't talked about it a lot yet. But it is getting better and better with every update, but it's just a really quiet thing. So, I'm just looking at the reference image and just trying to lay in the placeholders, but really, this is the part where I would timestamp and send to my optometrist. I make a lot of optometrist jokes. I don't have an official optometrist. And if I contacted them, they would say, hey, your glasses are expired. So we're just going to continue. But looking at this, I just have memories of just working with this nose so long. Like, this video was quite the process. Sometimes I will just kind of sit at the computer and just kind of explore a process for a large amount of time. And this was kind of one of them. I put 7 hours into this thing, just kind of messing around. But before this, I'd actually did a woman, and I was really pleased with the woman. I was like, wow, I have improved. And I wanted to do something on that, but I was like, let me try something different. So, we're trying this reference image. And, reference images and fan art of reference images is just always the riskiest type of modeling because, if you mess up, it's visually obvious because, you got your reference image. So, I had a foolproof plan to avoid that. So I tried in this video where I used the UV project modifier, which, I never talk about, but I do care about a lot, and I use it all the time when it comes to reffing things. And you might be looking at this thinking, hey, this is the most non-hard surface model ever. And, it's kind of hard surface to me. The lines were pretty hard. So, kind of approaching it like as if I was going hard surface with it. But, humans are not my forte. But, it's just one of those things that I got to get better at it someday. So, I just got to keep trying. And so, you might be thinking, hey, you should be using Dynamesh or dynamic topology or multi-res. And it's like, yeah, I know. But, the crazy thing is that my Wacom is always disconnecting, like randomly. Like, I will just be moving it and the cable will jiggle and it will just disconnect. And it's like literally the worst thing ever. Like, I am not a big fan of Wacom. I was looking at their website and their prices are reflective of the economy. But also, I don't have a problem with this tablet. It just disconnects when I put my hand on it. Maybe my gorilla arm's way too much, but You know, this part, I think I remember thinking, hey, this guy looks a little bit like Abraham Lincoln. You know, he had the Abraham Lincoln look. So, you know, I'm trying to get as far as I can without having to have the reference intimately in Blender. But the moment I bring in a reference image, I see that I was off terribly and that there is no way I was going to be anywhere close to the reference, which is interesting because, you know, I always thought that I was pretty alright at somewhat adhering to references, but I'm not. I am terrible. I tell you guys all the time, I'm a hack. So just being able to, just admitting that, so weight off my chest, the weight of a Wacom actually. Just kidding. I'm just making a joke here, but I've had this video sitting on my computer all week and then a little bit of last week. Like, I was debating. I was like, should I upload this? Should I even make it like a Patreon exclusive or what? And it's like, you know, I should just make it a public video. So, you know, here we are. One of my favorite ways to work in Blender is having sculpt in my left hand and edit mode in my right. And what I mean by that is I will be in edit mode, but instead of object mode, I'll be in sculpt mode. So I'll be working in edit mode, just kind of adding things. There I'm using a little bit of mirror curve just to do a little bit of shaping, but no matter how much I shape this thing's nothing. In fact, I see that I probably should have made the video even faster for you guys watching this, because who has the patience for this? But I'm telling you, the uncut version was just too long, and also I didn't even talk in it. You know, with these videos that were longer, I was trying to kind of demonstrate how, you know, the longer that you're in these models, the more that you kind of get into the zone and start to really make connections, you know, or at least that's how it is with me. And, you know, I'll try to show that, but, you know, I get a lot of comments of people complaining about the video time. So, you know, I do ponder heavily on possibly going back to time lapsing, because time lapsing, you know, you just get complaints of people wishing it was not a time lapse, right? But you can at least compress it to people's time spans, because people want things in the form of shorts and they have no time span. So, but then I also get comments of people saying, hey, I just finished your 20-hour camera tutorial. It's like, geez. They're like, yeah, finished it, 3 days, done. What's next? It's like, what's, hey, don't test me. Look, I was trying to do a giant aircraft carrier, but I was like, you know what'd be cool is if we did every room and like all the tables and chairs and everything in every room and every bed, and we were able to go up the stairs and go through staircases. So I've been trying to model in that way. And I know I'm talking about something random in the middle of a video about this Xavier guy. And, you know, looking at him at this state, I see that I've kind of given him kind of Africanized proportions, which kind of revealing about me as an artist. I mean, not saying that I'm African, but you know, it comes out in your modeling, right? Like, no, maybe not, maybe not. You know, I have to go look at Rhett. You know, I bet Rhett, he's always just doing girls, and I've seen him before. He looks nothing like a little girl. He looks like a burly dude. I mean, chicks might run from him. You know, don't want to go that far, but he definitely doesn't look like the subjects he sculpts. So, you know, I take that back. You know, I'm talking out of my butt here. I'm sorry, guys. So, we're just getting in here knifing and just jumping in. And mainly all I'm using is just join, slide, and dissolve. And I love join, slide, and dissolve. You know, dissolve on alt. Sometimes I have line on alt. But really, slide never leaves shift. I'm just a shift slide sort of guy. You'll probably notice that even in the videos where I'm using inflow, I'm always using slide on shift, just because it just feels so nice. You know, I'm just tap, 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 just, and I just keep shaping and shaping and shaping this thing, guys. So, I mean, if you want, you could jump ahead further in the video. I mean, I would. Just kidding. No, I would want to see how he deals with this air and see what happens here. You know, I'm curious in it. You know, watching it like as if I'm not the person who did this. And then finally I bring in a reference image, and we just look at how off I am. So now we use UV project, and UV project will allow you to use a custom image to project on the axes of the model. And so we just want to project from the front, and of course that will also put it on the back. And I tried to align it to the reference image, but that was not going to work out. I thought it was going to work out, but we're just seeing how off I am when it comes to the reference image. So, how off am I? In my mind, I think I'm pretty off. But here's another part that I enjoy. I enjoy whenever I'm making people that I will add a shape key and then max it out, and then use the shape key to kind of go back and forth between iterations of messing with the stuff. Because, like I said, I'm not the best person at sculpting people, and really I just need to just keep on just giving it a good little half hour every day, just mess around, or 6 hours depending. But I see these people that do these like low poly anime girls on Twitter, and they're just like having fun using texture painting and just messing around, and it's like, wow, they're having all the fun in Blender. So I want to be one of those people, and that's why I'm actually doing this. Like, I was looking at it, I was like, this looks like it would be fun. I'm doing this, and it turns out that it's not very fun. I mean, just kidding. Of course it's fun. But, I mean, everything's educational. And education is just... it's hard to make it fun, right? Like, that's why so many people are crashing out in education nowadays. So here's another thing I enjoy, is going inside of sculpt mode and turning on lock. But not lock for X. Turning on lock for Z and... turning on lock for Z and Y. No, turning on lock for Z and X, but not for Y. And that basically means that anything I use when it comes to inflate or grab will basically only pull the mesh forward or back. So basically, it allows me to stick with the proportions of the reference image, but not go outside the bounds. And also, I'm only dealing with the amount of depth that's happening with it as far as how it's being pushed out. The face in the back was something that haunted me, so I just put a material on it because I just couldn't stare at it. But you see me going back and forth comparing my shape keys, and we see that I'm already making an immense amount of progress getting it to adhere to the reference image, which is just such a nice concept. Like, every now and then I just see a background on my computer and it's just inspirational. I mean, all my backgrounds inspired me, that's why I saved them. I mean, right now my background's this red motorcycle, probably generated with AI at this point, because it's just dug into our society on all levels. Not saying that I'm looking at and admiring AI images and adding them to my reference, but they just sneak up on you now, so I've just kind of given up with it. It's just terrible. But I do enjoy looking at them and saying, that one's definitely a human. I just love human choices. I think there's a middle ground that's able to be found with it. So here, I'm just using a little bit of inflate, and all inflate's doing is pushing it out on the Y-axis. It can't even move it on the X or the Z. And it's just such an interesting way to work. Like, these are some of the things that I just love about working inside of Blender. Like, Blender has so much going for it. I mean, you can complain about the sculpt, but Blender is making some progress. Very, very slow, very weird progress always. Blender be blendering. That's all I could say. Anything else will sound like a conspiracy theory. But ears are terrible, which means I need to do like a million ears. I need to do like a million ears, but instead you guys are watching me just kind of muck around with this one, just keeping it real simple based on the kind of the reference that I'm looking at here, which really isn't giving me a whole lot. But I mean, it's just an ear, right? Like, ears are just ears. I mean, I probably looked at so many ears that I could probably draw ears now. So now we bring in the eyeball, and we just got to make sure the modifiers are in the right order. And I like to make sure that the eyeballs are the same size as you see here. So I'll basically have the eyeballs array on one side, and then mirror it to the other side. And that way I can basically, because the eyeball is basically the measurement of one eyeball from the center. So I'll just try to adhere to that, and that's just one of the ways that I adhere to it. So they're always working, so I got to capture these errors and send them up to the team to get dealt with whenever it comes to nSolve. Anytime that there's an issue, got to get that taken care of. Like, the tool's almost stable, and I'm very pleased with that. So We are now at the 20-minute mark. I'm still just working on these proportions, and you'll get so many funny screen caps of this because I fight with the proportions and how it's set up the entire time, and it just never got easier. I apologize there. I'm just rocking back and forth, just standing here at the computer narrating this video, but I kind of wish I was blending at the same time, but then the narration would have the sounds of me just like pressing hotkeys and stuff, which wouldn't even be useful for this video. Like, it'd be weird for me to be narrating just using Blender. But having UV project what's going on with the reference just comes in handy, and I actually hardly ever use it for human references, to be honest. So just seeing this, it was like, wow, this is a good opportunity. I mean, I might go back to this artist page and grab another one of these X-Men just because it's great. I mean, I'm not even going to use an intro on this just because I don't want to, you know, insult the artist or make them upset with, you know, AI. AI is going to take a long time for people to be convinced about. I mean, really, it's over for, it's over. But it's not only over for us; it's over for everyone. It's over everywhere. It's affected everything. Things going to be cleaning bathrooms, good bathroom cleaning, and then cook our food probably with the same robotic hands. So back to the video. So eyes are always a pain. We got to get the eyeshadow showing. You know, got to get our JD Vance going. You know, so we'll just pull these down, and everything's looking so far so good. You know, the more sliding, the more little edges I add, the more confident I'm getting in this model. But this model was definitely an example of me looking at a reference and thinking, oh, I'll just knock that out real fast. And then I just keep messing with it. I'm like, this isn't it. I mean, I've looked at a million Professor Xavier's. I mean, it's not like you could pick him in a fighting game or anything. I mean, what would he do? Roll out in a wheelchair anyway. So, I mean, hey, he'd roll out and he'd call his mutants to him, and then you get a beat down. You know, if it was Marvel vs. Capcom style, you know, you probably want the X-Men to the Xavier power up. But sorry, getting sidetracked here. So continuing on, the nose was also an area that was just a pain to work on, but I did want to kind of do some content to demonstrate just how I use nSolve in more creative capacities, right? Like, you know, usually my entry to demonstrate something is always hard surface, guys. I always come out and I'm like, hard surface. But there's so much more to hard surface, right? That's why I'm always talking about bunnies. You know, it's not me being completely insane. Like, I'm just also like trying to think of things that the opposite of hard surface, right? So now I'm looking at flamingos and beavers. Yeah, not the women, you know, just beavers. So I thought I was at the part where I start modeling the details, but this was something I wanted to experiment with, where I just tried to just model in the details that I'm seeing in the reference, even though these are probably just not even that way. But I just want something that was sharp, like Dishonored. But me, I'm not familiar with the integrals of making these styles. I'm just really experimenting with this, just trying to see how close I can get this reference. And every time I go to wireframe mode, I'm just thinking, this isn't it. This isn't close enough. But as I get these lines in, and the more I model them in there, using a little bit of nSolve, you know, nSolve is just my edit mode companion. You know, back in the day, it used to be hopsCutter, and not saying that hopsCutter is a bad edit mode companion, but hopsCutter would start whenever you clicked and dragged in edit mode, and that's not what you want in edit mode. So that's where nSolve comes in handy. Got a little more going on for it for edit mode, but that's fine because hopsCutter is a tool made for object mode and cutting boxes. So we're just getting in here and just messing with our proportions once again. Got to slide things in. You know, with the eyes hidden, looks totally creepy, but let's get in with our grab brush, and we're just back and forth. And this part was actually not bad, where I duplicated it and started modeling the actual suit that he's wearing, which I don't get a lot of experience when it comes to modeling suits. So this was a fun part of it for me. And I was thinking of that when I was modeling. I was like, ooh, I actually never modeled a business suit before. I mean, maybe I have. I just can't recall it clearly. which makes me a liar. But I don't know if I have modeled a business suit before. So, I mean, normally I would just go in Marvelous Designer, and at this point, Marvelous Designer gives you default templates, which will get you like a majority of the way there to most outfits, in addition to me having outfits that I've got over time from using Marvelous Designer. But this isn't a video about Marvelous Designer. This is a video about modeling Professor Xavier's outfit. And modeling this would normally be a pain. Like if I was not looking at a reference, it would have probably been a pain. But because the reference is projected onto the mesh itself, it just made things a lot easier here. Like there's something to this that makes me want to attempt the UV project method with something a little bit more hard surfacey, a lot more demanding, and just see where we can get with it. You know, hey, if I don't go all the way, I would at least get pretty Ian Hubert with it, right? Like I would just, hey, call it a day, give it some really good lighting, composite the heck out of it, put some film grain on it, and hit it with some moss, right? You hit it with some moss, you call it a day. So now I'm modeling the tie, and with the tie I was like, you know, I want to try to be a little detailed with it, but you know, I can't really project a whole lot, so no need to get too detailed with it. But a straight back extrusion is going to work very good for this particular method of modeling. But you know, we're just having fun here. And for some reason, I am suddenly reminded that yesterday I went and watched a Joker movie, and it was absolutely atrocious. Like it was, I think my girl said she was going to cry in the theater. I was going to cry, but it was only because they had a shower scene in prison with the Joker, and the worst thing that happens to people in showers happens to the prince of crime. You know, they're not turning him into a thug, they're putting him in prison shower situations. It's just a crazy world, guys, right now. But we're just cutting out a coat. I said I'd be focused, guys. I said before I did the recording, I was like, I'm going to be a focused guy today, guys. Not talk about all the off-topic stuff that I love to talk about, because it's my channel. Why are you tuning in if it's not for me to just be talking? So you probably didn't notice, but I used join, and then I used join with extension to quickly just do a little cutty cut, a little extended cut, which if you update nSolve right now to the 003 version B, I believe, it has where if you draw join past extend, it will turn into a line, and if you press Alt, it will allow it to cut through, which it just comes in handy. It's really crazy. I just see join becoming a very serious tool in itself, just by itself. In fact, join may deviate so far from what it is now that we will have to call it something else, and then we'll have to make a new join to be basically join. But why would you need it if there's a version that's so super that you just have it as your default edit mode operation? And that's what I'm seeing. Like I was talking about with the team, I was like, you know, we should do this thing called multi, but really multi doesn't have to exist. It could just be join. It could just be join with a little bit more versatility. So there's a lot going on with it right now. But in case you're wondering what's going on, I mean, I'm always testing, eternally testing, and I think I mentioned in previous videos that it was time for me to begin working on the next round of updates. So it's just been a lot of that internally, just getting the ball rolling on things, and it's just been a little bit slower of a roll than usual. I'm used to things rolling pretty hard, pretty fast, and also keeping you guys in the loop. But things aren't even getting to the level 1 state just yet, so more work to be done. But I do like that the tool is at least in a state right now where we're able to walk away from it, because it's just, it's the idea. The idea is there. But I do want to expand it and expand it and expand it times 10. Imagine me saying that times 10, to continue to expand it until it's an undeniable juggernaut. Right now it's a topological juggernaut, but it needs to become even more of one. And so strategically, I'm always thinking about what this thing needs next. And right now I'm hyper focused on join, and just making join just able to be the connector, the topological bridge, the writer, rewriter, the unwriter of geometry. And I know, just being able to extend into a line is nothing, but sometimes when something just fits, it is a game changer. And I'm just looking at the topology, and in my mind now, I see different topological solutions that I would have attempted on this. Which every model I do now, I'm always thinking about, should I add this to nSolve as a model to basically allow people to test out different hyper solving situations on models that are more complex than cubes. But if that's the case, I would probably add tools. I'd probably add models for a brief time, and then just get rid of that version, or get rid of the model out of that version, or post that version, or have it as a additional DLC on it. But I'm seeing that people aren't really into the whole solving thing. So from the built-in model, so that part might have to be rethought. And so right here, I'm just trying to use a human head that I have a ton of base meshes. So I just inserted a base mesh that I had, and I'm just using it to kind of adjust the proportions to try to get Xavier to look a little more human, which there's no hope for me. Like, I should have inserted a skull. But if you insert a skull, then you're conforming to a skull. You still got to think about the muscle and the fat and all that stuff. So it's not so easy, right? And of course, Windows got to tell me that there's updates or something. Leave me alone. Get out of here, you bum. But I am pleased with what I'm seeing. I think before I started getting it to fit these proportions, my version had a little bit more character, but that's just me. And also, I see that I'm messing it up in some places, but we're just having fun here. And like I say, I'm not the best sculptor. In fact, human sculpting is just really one of those things. It's just one of those things. Like, I wish I was better at it. So all I gotta do is just keep practicing, absorbing tips, and just hoping that things click. But I am pleased with where this went. I mean, we're only at the halfway point of this, so let us continue, right? In fact, during recording, I can't even zoom out on my recording to see like the timestamp of how much I have left. So we are just working. So now comes the part where I begin setting up the presentation, which means I put a hops camera and I get to look at it frontally, and we're just getting in here, adding more geometry. Always more geometry. I just like the idea of adding geometry as needed to get a shape, and that's really what these sculpt modeling sessions are for me. It's just me procuring geometry on site, just adding it as needed, managing it as needed to try to get the shapes that's needed, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not. So now we are transitioning into the part where we begin sharpening it, try to get that hard surface look, which I actually was getting pleased when I jumped to this, because the model did start looking better. And I wasn't exactly sure if this was going to be a success. Like, a lot of recordings that I work on, I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be a successful recording until at the end, like probably the last moments, that I'm like, wow, this recording might make it to the net. In fact, right now, I'm actually inundated with a bunch of videos that start off very strong, but they don't end strong. So as a result, I'm like, can't just become a garbage channel. I can't even think of a garbage channel to reference, because they've all turned into streaming systems now, right? So, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to put garbage content up. So with this one, at least I know that in the part 2, I can go in, wrap this up, end up with a decent model, and have a nice game plan for it. Like I said, my modeling modifiers is getting in here and trying to complete these things, because it is definitely fun to start a tutorial series, but getting in and finishing it, that's the part that's hard. Where does a series end? Does it end with you Ving? Does it end with you getting it out to a render engine, or getting it in a game engine, or in Unreal? Who knows? But these are the questions that I ask myself. What does it take to finish a tutorial? Like, what is the end of a tutorial? Because I watch tutorials and they just make things. Even on No Mind, I watch them, they just make it. They're like, yeah, I made it, and I'm out. Like, well, what do you do with it? It's like, I don't know. Goodbye. It's like, okay. But that's only some of them. Some of them, they go all the way. Like, I love the ones where they go all the way to Marmoset. which is something I also want to do. Like I want to do some lower poly stuff so that way I can demonstrate it with Marmoset, because Marmoset's been having all this fun with the bevel shader lately, and I've been topologically adherent, which is less fun but definitely results in nicer geo. Like I've been getting people sending me back their geo as a result of just using nSolve, and it's very nice geo. Some very nice geo. Very pleased with the results I'm seeing. If you want to motivate me, send me some nice geo. I'll say yes. Yes. Alright, had to change songs there. And looking at this in retrospect, and just looks so hard, right? And the only lines that I have enabled as far as markings is sharps, bevel weight, and crease. There isn't no seams present because it's just easier to just not have it at times, because it would have made selection weird. Another thing too is I wanted to make a model and go through using baking and texture painting just to see how it's evolved in Blender, because Blender changes so much on the things that I focus on, the sectors that I'm engaged with, which is mainly modeling, rendering, geometry nodes a little bit. But texture painting's also evolving, and while it's easier to just, hey, let's just go out and use Substance Painter or Marmoset, all these programs are getting bought, so we got to double check and just see how Blender's doing on these things, making sure that we're not losing every option whenever every bridge gets caught on fire. And the entire time I'm working on this model, you'll see me just trying to clean things up and make things a mess, try to get rid of n-gons, add n-gons, manage triangles, leave triangles. Some triangles are acceptable depending on where they terminate. For example, in these areas, I don't even know if I'm planning on adding subdivision to this model. I just wanted to get in, just have some fun with something. So you're just watching me just kind of unwind. I just get in, I just start sliding and messing with things infinitely. Might unwrap with a good old book. I've been reading so many books lately, guys. I read 2 biographies about Elon Musk. Not because I'm a crazy fan of him. There's another error for me to send up to the team. Always on the clock. Alright. But anyways, yeah, I've been basically reading biographies about Elon Musk because I just wanted to understand him a little more. Because you only get the take that's given to you by the news, and after reading his biographies, I see that they're not that off. I actually am a fan now, but I wouldn't buy a car from him. First of all, the insurance is too high. Also, he takes parts out of the car if he doesn't know what they mean, and I don't know if I want that in a car, to be honest. That's not the best idea. I don't feel safe with that. I need all the parts in the car. Still just creasing it up, but as we add more geometry to the head, it's at least now getting a little rounder, so we get rid of some of that faceting. And there's just something about watching geometry get cleaned up that just makes it work. And to me, it's like a game of Tetris that's being automatically being played. Just watching someone else play it, except that person's me, like a ghost racer. So that part at the top of the triangle on the head, that's just such a hard part to rationalize. Even looking at it now, you just want to give it more geometry, but it's like, how would it flow? But, I'm asking y'all that question. I'm the person that made the video. So, just working in that geometry, guys. Now this makes me want to go back and actually give my previous works a critical eye, because I was working on someone right before this, and it was actually no, this thing's shaping up. All right, no, this thing's done. Stick a fork in it. Um, it might not be your Xavier, might not even be my Xavier. I think I saw this person had a Doctor Doom. Now I love Doctor Doom. I would go back and do their Doctor Doom. But let me know if y'all are a fan of this sort of content. Like, I just want to, I was working on some content where I would basically go to ArtStation randomly and then just grab someone's art and just be like, hey, let's just do this. And I started grabbing art, and some of these people that are rendering stuff, they render parts that are really hard to rationalize on a modeling level. And I don't know, it's hard for me to process failure, guys. So whenever I see like something failing, it just breaks me mentally. I hate failure, guys. I hate failure. I'm not born to be a failure. I'm not born to accept failure. Not born to. I can barely live with it. There I am renaming a song. I listen to this band Oblique Occasions. I love Oblique Occasions. Not talking about AI music. Oblique Occasions is a real person. I mean, I don't know how they come up with their music, but it just throws me. But they name all their music indecipherable Japanese characters. And because I can't read it, I can't ever find it in a playlist or on my iPhone. So as a result, I can never listen to it, right? So as a result, I give it a name it myself based on the feelings of the song. And that was just what I was doing, just giving y'all explanation. I mean, I'm sure y'all have seen me do that before, because I'm always doing that in videos. Like, I will rename a song. Like, this song is called Cold Refrigerator. I'm not going to go translate your word. And when I do translate their word, it's like Last Tears, and Last Tears is a good song. So now modeling the suit and just throwing it in there, and I remember this being a little bit of a pain, but we see that, it's shaping up. And what's crazy is I've been doing this in Blender, but I've also been doing this on the iPad. Like, I've been trying to actually do this in another program called Uniform, and that program actually has a mesh system that's kind of like Blender's mesh system was before it got Ngon support. So you can't actually have Ngons, meaning you can't hold the phone with your geometry. You have to be accountable for everything that you do. And that is a terrible way to model, right? But it was the way Blender used to be. You say that now, and they're like, sure, Grandpa, let's take you to bed, right? But yeah, Blender used to have a Ngon experimental branch, and that branch would corrupt your meshes, and it was the greatest branch ever. But yeah, when Blender added Ngons, it was a very interesting day. The world wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. Speaking of rating songs, give that song a rating. Alright, and back to work. More sharpening, just a little bit. We'll never see these areas that I'm messing with here, but we'll just sharpen them up anyways. And anyways, back to general content. Sorry, I got distracted. Sorry about my lack of presence. I mean, I'm working on it, but so much rain, guys. There's actually more rain than I thought in the world. In fact, it's raining bombs. All right, it's crazy out there. It's crazy out there. Since y'all saw me last, they tried to assassinate the president again. That's how crazy the world is. So I mean, I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't even know what to say. The world's just too weird for me to. I don't even know. I don't even know, guys. I don't even know. I just sit at home in fear, modeling in fear. I mean, I love it. It makes me model harder, but also it's very anxiety inducing. So all the stuff that's lower beneath the collar, I need to just cut it out and remove it. And the longer I leave it, the more I am wasting my time. And it'll be interesting to see when I actually discover that. probably any moment now, I'm going to realize, like, hey, all the stuff that I'm messing with is just a waste of UV space. And in fact, sometimes a man has to UV a mesh in order to see that he's made a mistake. You know, imagine UVing and thinking, man, I've made a terrible mistake, at least with that part. But, you know, seeing this guy shape up, even though I did it, I am like, hey, I am proud of it. I'm proud of it because, you know, I didn't think that I'd be able to pull it off, but, you know, modeling and having confidence is just that's another topic. But to go in with the spirit and the attitude of being able to say, like, yeah, I can do this, and to do it, you know, it's something I think everyone struggles with, but I still struggle with it myself. Like, you know, it's kind of weird to sit down at Blender and to not to know, like, hey, is what I'm about to do about to be successful, or am I about to waste my time? And, you know, that's something that I think about and I want to mitigate, because if it happens to me, it probably happens to you too. Like, you ever sit down at something, you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna pull this model off. But, you know, that's why I wanted to show these longer videos, is because, you know, when you sit down at a model and you really give it a good moment, give it a good look over, like with this model, I walked away, I came back, I walked away, I came back. I dealt with the cats, I fed the cats. I went and jogged a bunch, got tired, took a few old man naps, came back, modeled on this on midnight, modeled on it at 4 in the morning, modeled on it at 2 in the morning, modeled it at 9 at night. You know, modeled at it when people were around and they're like, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, this piece of concept art. This thing's just been like just kind of just cooking on screen. Like right now I have like 15 blenders open, and all of them I was about to say an anonymous joke, but I don't know if I can make old meme jokes. And another thing I was thinking is, you know what'd be crazy would be to have this guy at the end say, to me my mutants. Sorry, I should clear my voice. If I say it too loud, my woman will hear me. To me, my mutants. I mean, sorry, I'm not a good Xavier. All right, look, don't cast me for Xavier in the new MCU. I'm sorry. But I wanted to give him a mouth back. And I want to give him a tongue. I want to give him teeth. So you might see me come back and do that in part 2, where I just come back and actually make him able to speak. But, you know, if I was a concept artist, I would find it cool to see my art turned into 3D, unless you're already a 3D artist, because chances are, as the person who modeled this, I mean the person who drew this, they could probably model it far better than I could. They'd be like, hey, I modeled it in 15 minutes because I drew it. You overthought it. I just drew it. These lines are just indications. They're not literally facial indications. You overthought it. But we see that we're making some progress with this thing. You know, every time I jump into camera and let it turn around, it's like a transitional period where I got up and walked away from the computer. And I also wanted to explore having inflow able to expand into additional sections that aren't previously part of the plan. Because, you know, my idea, or not my idea, my goal with everything is always to expand it beyond the bounds of its initial plan. You know, usually we'll come up with a concept, and then my thought is always, how can we take it further? How can we take it further than where it is? Because, you know, that's how you make a product a success, at least in my eyes. So I am by no means losing hope in this thing. I only see that more strategization is needed to get it to connect with the masses. You know, every comment expressing you know, people's wishes or needs or expectations, you know, all that stuff is important data. You know, and one of the ones that really stuck with me was people saying that they wanted the bandoliers to have text instead of being just icons, which icons only does reduce it to being hieroglyphics. So that's something I do talk about a lot internally a lot. But the options we have for that are rather limited. But that just means that alternative solutions must be implemented, right? So, everything's a discussion. And we look at this area, and, topologically, it was getting to be a little bit of a mess. So I'm just in here getting it cleaned up. But since we're not turning this into subdivision, we don't have to be so diligent with getting everything to flow together. But me being me, I do try to be a little extra with the geometry, but really it's not necessary. Like, I'm sure there's another video of someone else approaching this, and they just take it in ZBrush and they just do it on a basic mesh, and then they just do a poly paint and call it a day. They're like, hey, I did Xavier, 30 minutes, they're over. And here I am at minute 50, jumping back and forth between the references and dealing with smoothing and just creasing things up. But it doesn't matter. The goal isn't to necessarily speed model. I mean, of course, now in this day and age, everything has to be faster and more frenetic and quicker, and now. And I understand that. But also, I'm an old man, so, trying to make it in first place in a race where no one else is even racing me isn't the best use of my time. And there's so much to get anxiety about. And I'm sitting here giving myself anxiety about modeling things as fast as humanly possible. I mean, I'm just sitting here just having a good old time. But I do understand the time concerns of you, the viewer. So that's why we're watching this compressed heavily. Like, you're like, how compressed is this? I'm like, this is like 7x. Oh yeah, so now we're at the part where I start trying to get it to merge with the back. And I was creative with this. I forgot about how the front was, but I also wanted to ensure that there were loops to connect across, just in case. I'm always thinking about edge flow. I don't even know what type of mesh I'm trying to create here. And I just wanted to build it into a nice little bust, just like the reference image. People always wonder why you do a bust. It's like, this is why. Sometimes bust is just part of the design. In my other windows, though, I'm working on iterations of this death rabbit. I still haven't forgotten about it. It's my hobby, guys. There's a design experiment in character. However, I was playing Final Fantasy earlier, and I fought something called a lich, and I was like, oh my god, this is the character. The character. I'm seeing liches, guys. All right, so it's all over. Watch, Virial's going to come out looking like a lich. So this part where I'm connecting everything up was almost illogical, but I just needed to complete the mesh. And I wasn't entirely a fan of how this topology was. But since the mesh is asymmetrical now, I have to think about how I approach it. And also, the boundaries are specified by the reference image. So I don't want to make any adjustments to that. So here we are, just sliding our geometry, trying to work our loops in here. I do look forward to coming back with general content and hopefully doing this giant asset. Like, I wanted to do something larger. Like, the camera was a little bit larger than my usual type of assets, and so I want to do something even larger than asset. Just keep graduating in asset sizes, except I think I grew too large and too ambitious just because I was trying to telling you, burnout is so real. And then the next thing you know, you're sitting at your computer, modeling Xavier. But what's crazy about me is that I could burn myself out, and then I will still be modeling. I'll be modeling in a burnt out state. It's just harder to record. So here I'm trying to get all the iterations of the model into scenes. Like I've just been messing with scenes lately to jump back and forth through all the iterations of a model. So here you're just able to see like what version 1 looked like, version 2, version 3, and now we're jumping up to I think version 4, where we're going to begin UVing it, texture painting it, and trying to deal with a final iteration of it. But really, it's only the V1 version of the model. Like, I do want to go back and adjust the paint job and get something a lot more competent. But, I was worried that if I did that, the video would have just been even longer. Even though it's in the back, I still care about that geometry. But I see that I had too many loops being consolidated too rapidly, which isn't the biggest concern, but all right. I don't think I've ever seen Xavier in gray before. It's almost like a Mr. Negative version of him or something, right? Like he had all his color sucked out whenever you see him as a gray mesh. But I think I see it now. So now we're onto the stage where I'm UVing it. And we see that I had too much happening with the UVs. So I need to delete some geometry. We see that there is a lot happening under the collar, and as a result we need to go in and clip that. But for now we're just going to jump through to UVing. So I'm just unwrapping everything now, finally putting seams in things, and I just kind of accept these UVs, even though I probably could finesse them to be a little bit better. But deleting useless faces will certainly help this, and the UVs that they gave me for that were pretty nice. I mean, these, I think the initial UVs we had were also very nice for those spheres, for those UV spheres, but we lost them. So now let's take a look at what we're looking at here. We'll delete all of that. We'll delete that, and that's the part I was waiting for, was where we finally get the UVs to pack a lot better. So the face obviously is the most important. And we'll just scale these down. For me, I refer to this as important scaling, where I just make sure the UVs are set up to be the right scale in accordance with how important they are. Just because I know some of these things are obscured by other things and really aren't that important. Like, for example, the white shirt on the inside probably is the most important. So now I'm trying to set up to bake from one set of UVs to another, and baking in Blender is just really weird now, where you have to have your image inside of your shader, and then you have to jump over to cycles. And I'm trying to bake from one UV coordinate set to another, and that's just not going to work out. So you see me going through and just tweaking settings to just make sure that that works out. And for a moment I was like, am I going to be able to get this to work? But in the end, it came down to me just needing to adjust the settings just right and rendering the color without any sort of direct or indirect lighting taking place. We're able to finally get it to bake, which, I mean, this image looks truly disturbing. And for a moment there, you could also see the project UVs that I had, which they are just projecting straight on projection, which is a good projection. Not good for me, but this part was the part I was most excited for. Like, I was like, man, it'd be crazy to get in here and actually texture paint this thing and actually do a good job on it. but I see that the dark brown lines are kind of more important to the concept. So to just remove them would turn basically Xavier into a clone baby. I'd have to model some eyebrows. Model some eyelashes on him, and all of that. So that's why I wanted to cut it off at this particular version. Like, I wanted to give myself a moment to strategize and also get comments from you guys where you'll say, hey, this was terrible, you're terrible, everything's terrible. And texture painting in Blender has changed a little bit. So you see me kind of coming to terms with it. Like, Blender isn't so foreign that a man can't just figure out how this program works. But yeah, for a minute I was like, dang, this is crazy. So I go in, I try to do some corrections, which I thought would be easy, but we see that I'm painting out more than I wanted. And I try to get a little artistic with it, get in and start using smudge to just smudge it back. But, the more that I look at this, the more that I see that, Xavier here looks like a character out of that game 13. So, I just wanted to make sure I did him justice. And even seeing that there's multiple shades of peach here, I'm already thinking now how I'll make a shader that possibly utilizes that based on the normal facing, and that will definitely shade him properly, at least in a way that will work for our needs. But yeah, we're nearing the end. So if you've watched this entire video, good job. You've survived another very long video. In fact, looking at this, I'm seeing that I need to reproject him back on it, and then maybe more selectively choose what I paint out of it. In fact, all the areas that I did as crevices, I could probably bake that to a map and then use that map against the reference to keep all of those areas, and then turn everything into that flesh gradient that I was talking about, and that would actually give us the result. I'm just thinking on the fly, just while I'm in this video, just because I'm talking, I'm just talking through possible options to go through and make sure I get the proper conceptual feel of the shader, because rendering isn't my strong suit either. But that was something I also wanted to go through and explore with you guys. But when I get negative comments, it does remind me that I could also not be putting videos of myself being terrible online, adding to the calamity of the world. I could just make sure I only put my best foot forward. But at the very beginning I was talking about that, guys. Like, that isn't what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do videos that show me being human. I want to grow with you guys. I want to try to evolve through work and have victories with you guys, where you see me overcome a bunch of adversity to get to a goal, instead of just coming in rehearsed and defeating this like a Highlander, because that is definitely the preferred scenario. I must always reiterate that. Like, if I just practice things over and over and over, which is what I was doing right before I started recording this, just practicing modeling a person. And this part was also when I started to realize that, hey, I probably need to come up with a special solution whenever it comes to rendering, in order to choose what I keep and what I don't have. What I keep and what I get rid of, because we look at this and we see that while his suit is green, it's like multiple shades of green, right? So that's where we probably want to have some view-based shader. In fact, my version of Xavier here is like a version of him as if he has like what's that, skin illness. But that's how my version looks right now, because I'm trying so hard to keep the concept going when it comes to the shading, when really, if I'm UVing it and texturing it, I need to take over all the stuff. I need to just bake it in clean and just rebake all the cavity in there. So here I'm just using a little bit of mesh selection to use the bucket fill, which I just love the bucket fill. And having that loop at the bottom wasn't the worst solution. I jumped through all the shaders just because I was just curious on how such a concept would look. Showing it sped up like this doesn't do it justice, but yeah, seeing it in real time, I was definitely able to admire this.